Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and this week I have a very special guest, Jan Heinemann, who is both doing a book project about EuroWarGames and has a YouTube channel about history. Hey Jan, how are you doing today?
Hi Liz, thanks for inviting me.
Do you want to give us a slightly more in-depth rundown about the things you do?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the big project here, EuroWarGames, the book you were talking about. That's the main thing I'm concerned with right now. As we got in all the abstracts of potential contributors, and we are in touch with potential publishers, doing some negotiations and so on. So the book project EuroWarGames. So it's about war games and Eurogames and everything around those two topics, which indeed is a really broad subject. It started back in, let me think, in May, I believe, when Fred and Ricardo, so Frederic Serval and Ricardo Mazzini, were at Dan Pancaldi's No Enemies Here, and they had the in conversation, and they were just chatting about like wargaming in France and in Italy, and Ricardo did like a 1 hour YouTube video on the history of Italian wargame magazines. And then I thought, man, we should do like a project together and bring together the various different perspectives from all over Europe together in the book. And that's the main idea behind this.
That's a great idea. So I'm an American. I see everything from my very
Mhm.
American-centric perspective. But I'm assuming. So does Europe have its? So does Europe have a distinctive European wargaming culture, or is it different per country? What kind of do you think of different publishers when you think of war games? I mean, if you say war game, I think of G&T, Dan Versen, Compass. Are there is there just an entirely different world out there that we're not seeing?
So, I mean, you have a point there. With wargaming, and we're talking here about hobby wargaming, is definitely dominated by US American and maybe Britain publishers. And yeah, but of course we have some European publishers as well. Not as big as GMT, let's say. Um, yeah, and the problem is really about visibility and connecting to each other. Because we are split up in Europe in so many different countries, and there are like national gaming communities and maybe even associations, but there is no connection, no inner European connection, at least on the hobby wargaming level. And that's the problem, the point where we started and thought we should give the opportunity to talk about how wargaming did develop in Europe, like from the very beginning, like Kriegspiel and where it all went, and how this is maybe today still in the military and professional wargaming the case, and there are indeed like inter-European professional wargaming events by the European Union and then NATO and so on, and yeah, bring those perspectives together and even check whether the professional wargaming and the hobby wargaming, how do they influence each other, and do we maybe have more in common than we believe we have, because we have the language barrier, which is a point in Europe. I mean, there are many uh, involved YouTube channels, for example, from Italy. So I don't speak Italian, I can't understand. And yeah, so the book will be in English. All the articles will be in English for that reason, and we hope to be able to, yeah, that the book will be a platform, so to say, a medium for new connections in Europe.
Excellent. I remember seeing calls for abstracts going around online when you were still in the abstract taking phase. And from what I understand, I initially didn't look at it twice because I thought that it was only for Europeans. But Americans, there are going to be American contributors to your book as well, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Because, as I said, it's not just about like the European perspectives, but also on a, let's say, theoretical or design level or approach. So we have some US American designers, for example, who are contributing, and we'll be thinking about how Euro war game and Euro game mechanics and war game mechanics are intertangled, and how they influence each other, and all the new mechanics we see in wargaming, like where do they come from, what has all that to do with Euro games.
Would you say that the majority of your contributors, however, are going to be European writers?
Yes. So I thought about that. I think I cannot name them quite yet, because we are still, as I said, negotiating with the publisher, and when we are done with that, which will be very soon, we need to set up the contracts and so on and so on. So yeah, but we have about 30 contributors, so that will be quite a wide range of various topics.
Excellent. And I know that this can be variable because publication is not a one easy road, but what are your goals for having this volume published? About when do you think it could be?
So initially, let me check the call. We were aiming for May next year, but I believe maybe August or September is more realistic now.
That makes sense. And I mean, I personally will hope that I can get it over here in the States. I will be looking forward to that. But
Hmm.
this is not your first academic war game project. This is in fact a larger academic interest for you. Is that correct?
That's correct, but let me add one thing. This project is not just academic. So we have like players contributing that who have no connection to uh, academy. So and we wanted to make that sure to have people like those that are not like scholars or scientists or professional wargamers, militaries, or so on, but players and designers as well. So to get the multi perspectivity. And yeah, it's not the first book. It will be the third book I will be co-editing. The other two were in German, though, like conference volumes on history and political themes. Yeah, and I have an academic background in game studies, historical game studies. So mainly focusing on digital games so far, but as the digital game studies have been growing over the last years quite a lot, there interestingly is a lack of analog game studies. There are a few journals, but not too many. So I'm kind of shifting right now in the analog world of board games.
What made you start the shift? Did you play an analog game that you really liked, or did you just see an academic opening and that's what drives you?
I'd say the latter. I always have been playing board games. That's not the thing, and I always enjoyed them. Mainly strategical and war games, conflict simulations. But I also played digital games a lot. I mean, I have this YouTube channel for hobbies, and yeah, I thought there should be. I mean, it's like the book project. Really, there should be more connections and more thinking about how to take concepts of digital game studies, bring them back, so to say, to analog game studies.
So, when you say that you are studying digital or analog games, do you mean that you are making a study of games that I might just buy for hobby reasons, but you are interpreting them on a more academic level? Or is there a separate set of games the way that professional war gamers tend to look at things?
No, no, it's actually like the hobby games. I take them and analyze them and interpret them, put them into the historical context, and think about why and in which ways and why designers decide to portray a certain historical uh, events or contexts in a certain way, and what does that make with the players. So what's the how do games influence the perception of history players have?
Can you give a particular example of a game that you feel is especially influential and that you've enjoyed analyzing?
Oh, I'd say every game is influential. It really depends a lot on the player, and their what they how they are shaped, how they are positioned in the memory culture, um, how they are shaped by popular media like films and so on, movies, and yeah. So it really is a quite subjective thing, which makes it hard to analyze. So there have been some empirical studies on that, but not sufficiently so far. I mean, the problem is that would be a huge project to make an empirical study about players and over a long time, because we know when players play a game, there is some influence. Their perception of the portrayed events will change by playing the game, but we don't really know yet how that turns out in the long run. So let's say a year after they played the game, how is their perception then? And you would have to incorporate all the other factors that might have influenced them in the meantime and so on. So yeah, it's it's a big thing to do.
So, just to kind of cut it down to be clear about what you're saying. So, if I play a game that represents a specific historical time and I, really get into that game, then when I think about that historical event from that point on, what I understand about history will be marked by the fact that I played that game and I will take on maybe some of the interpretive aspects of that game.
Yeah,
Is that
that's right.
correct?
Yeah.
So when you say memory culture, what do you mean by that?
So memory culture really is how we as a society handle history, how we remember history, and all the aspects, the formal and informal aspects of remembering the past in like academic books, in popular movies, in museums, in I don't know memorials, and all these come together and form a culture of how and what is remembered in a specific way. And that is, of course, shaping the individuals which are uh, in the which live in these cultures. And there are more national cultures, and they also influence each other and so on.
So I don't know about you, but I feel like the hobbyist wargame community has a lot of conflicts right now about the kinds of games that we should and shouldn't play, the sorts of
Hmm.
themes that we should and should not have. Does your research play into any of that at all?
I know. As a researcher, I would say there is no game we should not have. And if there are problematic games or games we think about as potentially problematic, that is actually a good thing because we can then have a debate about why we think those games might be problematic, and really have this debate on a high level. So maybe think about our um, memory culture, and maybe that we might be that we have to change that. So I mean, when we are thinking about like street names, or I don't know, names of places or so on, and we look at Germany, we still have names of military people here that were so the street names were changed during the Second World War, and they remember, like, I don't know, Leto Vorbeck or people like those who went to Africa and killed the people there. So shall we remember those names? And if not, if we don't think we should we then change the name of the streets, or should we put a little sign there uh, and write down, like, what did the person, and why is it problematic? Why do we decide to leave the name there, so as to remember the bad thing? Yeah, it's really about discussing these things, and of course there happens to be, in the world of the internet, discussions are not always friendly minded. There's lots of conflict, and yeah, but we have to get around that.
I completely agree with you there. So again, just to sum up, basically, even things as simple as, I think about, so you're thinking about, names from your context. When I think about
Hmm.
that, I can't help but think about how the United States, we've been having conflicts about how and whether to remember people who fought during the Civil War, especially
Yeah.
people who fought for the Confederacy. So, in my hometown, there used to be a Robert E. Lee High School, and now it
Hmm.
has a different name. But there are people who are upset about that. There are people who thought that the name should be changed. And I do see how this would apply to games, because I think we like to say it's just a game, but every time you play a game, you're embodying someone by
Hmm.
playing as that side. You are choosing which events to remember, which events to portray, and that has its own kind of influence. Are there specific historical periods that you prefer to work on when you do this work?
um Not really. So during my study, I have specialized in ancient classical Greek history. I've specialized in early modern, like, say, 30 Years War and 7 Years War history, and then got on a higher level, like more into public history and game studies and theories and such. So I'm basically open to any topic that seems to be worth digging in.
That makes sense. So, when you think about topics that are over or under covered, what topics do we as a culture, or actually, since you're talking about Eurogaming culture, do you expect to find that different countries in Europe memorialize and favor different events and it shows in their war games? Or do you think that you're going to find a lot of the same events being covered with maybe some different flavoring depending on where the designer is from?
Hmm. That's a good question. I mean, I think it depends on the period, really. So, for example, Second World War, which is still quite present to all of us, is covered in games from publishers all over Europe, and maybe like Napoleonic Wars or so will be published more in France. Yeah, so that's hard to say, but I would say the more recent periods and events are probably covered more broadly over Europe, and the more you get back in the past, that might be more a national thing.
Interesting. How would that apply? So you've mentioned that you've done ancient Greek historical work. I am a classicist by training. What is the ancient wargaming scene like in Germany for you, or in Europe more widely, if you could speak to that?
Actually, I can't say anything about that because I haven't worked on that in the work or in the historical game study context yet. So in this regard, I have been working on medieval times. There has been a huge controversy around the game Kingdom Come Deliverance, for example, which is from the Czech Republic. And I'm working about the Second World War then.
Could you tell us a bit more about the Kingdom Come Deliverance controversy?
Yeah, sure. So, Kingdom Come Deliverance is a game in taking place in late medieval times when a foreign army came to Bohemia with their soldiers pillaging the countryside and putting their own king on the throne. And yeah, it's the developers or designers took these events to portray Bohemia, but thinking of the Czech Republic or the Czech nation, even like as an example of the Czech nation being under attack by foreign powers, which is interesting because of the history of the Czech Republic and the formerly Soviet Republic, and their history in the Second World War, like being occupied by the Nazis. And there is this in their memory culture, there is the picture of the Czech nation always being under attack from outside, and now finally with the breakdown of the Eastern Bloc, they have their own country finally, and now that it's their mission to tell their own history. So that's the thoughts the designers had, and that makes it somewhat problematic in combination that they are claiming to design the most authentic and historically accurate game ever made about medieval Bohemia and maybe even medieval times in general. Yeah, and now we as historians and historical game studies, we have to, I think, take the game, play the game, analyze the game, put the game in the context of said Czech national memory discourse, and find representations that are problematic in the sense that they are painting an exclusive world, like the how can I say that the Czech nation now, in their opinion, has the only right to interpret and make a point about their own history, which is absurd. I mean, history is like a narrative, a subjective narrative, and like no matter which history we are talking about, we always have to uh, to analyze it and to get behind the narrative, try to get behind the narrative and see what might have happened there. But it's not about this is our history, this is how things went, and now we are the proud nation again.
So just to make sure I'm clear, um, basically we had some designers create a game that's set in the Middle Ages,
Hmm.
but that has a very modern lens looking
Yeah,
back.
yeah,
Because how can there be Czech pride of the nature that there is now
hmm,
in that time period? And so
exactly.
it's turned into a story about how can we interpret our own history, how can other people learn about history and then maybe have a comment on it, and it's just turned into a kerfluffle.
Yeah.
So is it even possible to design a game now and not somehow be viewing history through a modern lens?
No, there's obviously not, but it becomes problematic at the point when you say this is the most accurate game about history ever made. So if you claim to portray the past objectively and to show the real truth behind things.
Right. I mean, once you start to make an interpretive statement about what you made, then everyone can argue with it. It's
Hmm.
like having a thesis statement. Anybody can argue with
Yeah.
your thesis. Do you think that people sometimes don't even realize that they are advancing a thesis with a game? They might say, "Oh, it's just a game. I just read facts." But everything that you do make reveals something.
Yeah, probably. I mean, we are talking, and with we, I mean, I'm a member of the German Society of Historical Science and Digital Games. We're trying to talk to designers often and invite them to have dialogue with us about those things. And yeah, exactly. Often designers do not think about what they are portraying or how they interpret it and what it could mean to interpret it or to represent it in a specific way. And yeah, that's the case. But on the other side, as a game designer, you're always creating a world with a message, with a narrative, and you should think about things like this.
So you've also, in addition to your academic work, created a YouTube channel meant to bring some of these issues to light. You want to plug it?
Yeah, it's called Let's Play History, and yeah, as you said, the idea was when did I start? I think about 2017 or so. To take the historical knowledge I had and then the approach, um, and play some games and add some additional commentary on them. So about historical background, and try to think about the mechanics the game uses, what and try to interpret what did the designers want to show by using this specific mechanic. uh, what does it mean to the game world, and then our understanding of the portrayed history. And yeah, that was the main idea. I mean, this is a hobby project of mine. I'm also playing games just for fun and uploading videos there. But yeah, that's something that's not often to be seen on YouTube so far. There are a few other, at least in the German speaking bubble. When I think about it, there are maybe two other channels doing it like that. And ironically, those channels that talk about how it really was, or about, I don't know, the a knight's armor or something. They have billions of subscribers, and we are a bit struggling, but we are making progress.
So when you say bubble, what drives your decisions about what language you do your work in? Because I noticed on your YouTube channel, some of your videos are in English, most are in German. How do
Mhm.
you make that determination? I'm assuming it's a matter of personal comfort versus something that's more universally understandable.
Yeah, right. So all the digital games I've played so far, I've done in German, and then the board war games, I've mostly done in English. Actually, because the community playing war games is uh, much more English speaking, or at least when we think about Europe again, it's better to have gameplay videos in English so that foreigners can understand them as well.
Does that ever bother you? I mean, I can see how it would feel really unfair. I am uniquely blessed to be monolingual and I can get away with it.
Yeah, no, I think it's fine. Yeah, I mean, we talked about that before the podcast. I've together with another history YouTuber, I have a little podcast from time to time. We do episodes, and these are in German as well. We have some guests there. They come from Germany, um, so maybe we should think about switching to English there as well. I mean, it's it's you have a point there, but you do reach more people, um, even when you're just thinking about Europe or then internationally.
What do you think, other than English, would be the second most commonly used language of war games? I'm always curious about this.
Oof. Oh, I'm not sure. Um, but I believe might be French.
No,
Yeah.
why can't it be German? My German is so much better than my French.
Yeah, no. I mean, war games are not that popular in Germany. We do have a national association covering historical games, but it's mostly like conflict simulation war games. But it's not as big as, I don't know, the Italian Association or the French or even the British. And yeah, that comes back, or the reason for that, I think, is Germany's history with war, right? So we had the First World War, we had the Second World War, and yeah, talking about war in Germany is still today a difficult thing. Um, when we send soldiers to Afghanistan and so on, there were big debates about whether we should do or should not do that. And yeah, that might be the reason why Euro games are so popular compared to war games in Germany.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask because I feel like a lot of war games are about World War II. And if you play a
Hmm.
game about World War II, we know who the quote, well, we know who the bad guys are.
Yeah.
And that is not what modern Germany is like,
Hmm.
but it's probably not great to look back on our whole world's cultural memory and be confronted with that forever.
Yeah, but I think we should always remember the past and what happened, and war games and board games in general, and also digital games can be a good medium to do so. The question is, how do they portray the history? And when it comes to war games in this context, I mean, most of them are settled on the operational level. So we have some tank divisions here, some infantry divisions there. We have a headquarter, and now we're going to start our campaign, and I don't know, destroy some Americans, some French, whatever. But they do not mention the political aspects or even the economical aspects. But I mean, of course, the political thing is much more important when we talk about the Second World War, at least, and that makes them problematic for a lot of people in Germany.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. I also find it interesting though, Euro games don't I mean, Eurogames are great generally as a genre, but they also sometimes run into an issue, which is the issue of colonialism,
Yeah.
because so many Eurogames are about trade, but sometimes under suspicious
Yep.
circumstances. Is
Yeah.
that, would you say that German consciousness of that issue is lower?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Um, as I said, the example with the street name of Letterforbic, I've been growing up in the Letterforbic street in Cuxhaven. Um, there is no debate about, or very very little debate about the colonial past of Germany, um, of the Kaiserreich, and yeah, the Second World War is sort of overshadowing it all.
So basically, because there's one huge part of the past to reckon with, it might even block reckoning with other aspects.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. So if you could have people who watch your channel or read your work go back to the games that they play with one thing in mind, what would that be?
Um, always, when you play a game, always ask yourself why things are portrayed the way they are, and which mm, which systems they are trying to convince you of about how the past worked, how people worked in the past, how society worked in the past, and ask questions, and if you have asked those questions, go read some books.
That sounds like good advice to me. What are you playing for fun right now?
Various games. When we're talking about board games, I've just yesterday been playing Red vs. Reverse, which is about the Boer Wars with the British, a solitaire game. And yesterday evening, we've been playing an epic scenario of Commands and Colors Napoleonics.
Ooh.
And on the digital side, I'm playing Field of Glory 2, which is a tactical turn-based game set in ancient and up to medieval times, early medieval times. And yeah, numerous others, but mainly those.
Excellent. And where can we find you on the internet if people have questions for you?
Yeah, first of all, you can find out about the book project at eurowargames.wordpress.com. If you want to read the call, and there might be some sneak peek information soon on the page. And you can find me on twitter.com/Le Petit Capot LP. So that's like French for the little corporal. But yeah, if you look for Jan Heinemann, you will find me.
I'll put it in the show notes, everybody. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And of course, you can find me anywhere as Beyond Solitaire. Jan, thank you so much for coming on and giving us this time. I really appreciate it. You've been great to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Was great.
Happy gaming, everybody.